My daughter didn't ask for help. She commanded it. "I need the money tomorrow," she said, sliding her husband's $500,000 debt across my kitchen table like it was a grocery receipt. "And don't be late," she added, without even looking up from her phone. I didn't argue, I just smiled. The kind of smile that hides a storm. 4 hours later, while they still counted on my silence, I was already at the airport. By the time they arrived to collect their ransom, the house was locked, the lights were off, and only a single box waited on the porch. Inside it was the message that would undo them both. Betrayal, revenge, justice, it begins. But before that final reckoning, you need to know what pushed me there, because betrayals like this don't happen overnight. They build, one manipulation at a time. The doorbell rang 3 times, sharp and urgent, the rhythm of entitlement I'd learned to dread. I set down my glass of bourbon, the one I used to sip while reviewing quarterly reports, back when my life was still about numbers, not lessons. Through the window, I saw their white Tesla gleaming beneath the security lights. They always arrived in style when they came to beg. I walked through my marble foyer, past the ghosts of happier years. Family photos lined the wall, each one now mocking me. Emily missing her front teeth, Emily in her graduation gown, Emily on her wedding day, eyes full of ambition and secrets. And behind her, Miles, the man who'd turned her confidence into arrogance, scrolling his phone like he owned the world. "Mom," Emily wrapped her arms around me, holding on just long enough to make it look real. It wasn't affection, it was a transaction. Miles didn't bother with pleasantries. He strutted in, those polished designer shoes clicking across my floor, and dropped a stack of papers on my coffee table like a lawyer serving notice. I followed, watching my daughter fiddle with the pearl necklace I'd given her for her 30th birthday, the one she always touched before asking for something she didn't deserve. "Can I get you anything?" I asked, even though the only thing I wanted to give them was the door. Miles didn't glance up. "Let's cut to the chase, Claire. We have a situation. Claire, not Mom, not Mrs. Emerson, just Claire." Emily shifted beside him, her fingers worrying the pearls I'd given her years ago, the same nervous tick she'd had since she was 12, and lying about Grandma's china. Miles leaned back, spreading across my couch like a man taking inventory of his next possession. $500,000 wired by noon tomorrow, just family helping family. He said it the way a waiter recites a lunch special. I studied him, the tailored suit, the watch I'd bought him, the self-satisfaction of a man who thought charm was currency. "And if I don't?" I asked. He smiled without warmth. "Let's not find out." Some of our associates aren't patient types. Emily's voice softened, her favorite disguise. "Mom, please. You've always said family comes first." Her wedding ring, my mother's, caught the light as she spun it. Manipulation wrapped in sentiment. I felt the migraine building behind my eye, the old pulse of guilt and exhaustion. But beneath it, something else stirred, clarity. They thought they were cornering me. What they didn't know was that I'd already stopped being the prey. Miles laughed from the bar, a hollow, grating sound. "Jobs? I'm an entrepreneur, Claire. I create jobs." I almost laughed too, thinking of his string of ventures, the ones I'd bankrolled. The crypto crash, the consulting firm that consulted no one, the endless promises. Each failure had drained a little more of my faith, until all that remained was this moment, me, standing in my own home, realizing I'd raised my biggest debt of all. Manipulation wears many faces. but my daughter's favorite one was hurt. "You missed Sophie's recital," she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed, "and Max's soccer tournament, but you always have time for your precious reports." She knew exactly where to strike. Guilt, the softest weapon in her arsenal. Those reports kept her kids in private school, her Tesla charged, and her designer lifestyle alive. But I didn't say that, not yet. I just watched her mascara trace 2 perfect black lines down her cheeks, like a performance polished for sympathy. And that's when I realized this wasn't a plea, it was a negotiation, and they'd rehearsed every word. I straightened, forcing my body upright despite the migraine drilling behind my eye. "Let me understand," I said slowly, every syllable measured. "You need $500,000 by noon tomorrow. For what, exactly?" Emily glanced at Miles. That look, tight, telepathic, was the kind couple's perfect when they've lied together for years. Miles set down my scotch like he was closing a deal. "Real estate opportunity, time sensitive. Can't miss the window," I tilted my head. "You mean like the one you already missed in Round Rock?" He flinched. "That was different," he snapped, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the papers. "This one's property-backed tokens." A sure thing, there it was, the same slip, the same con, the same delusion that had already swallowed $200,000. I slipped my trembling hand into my pocket, hiding the anger that had begun to shake me more than age ever could. Emily's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, typed fast, and flipped it face down. Damage control in real time. "Mom," she said, soft again, "we've always supported you. When you and Dad divorced, who stood by you? When the economy crashed, who helped?" I almost laughed. "You were in Cabo that summer, remember? Posting poolside selfies with champagne while I was paying your bills." "That's not fair," she murmured. "Fair?" My voice stayed calm, dangerously calm. "Let's talk fair. The wedding, 100,000. The house, 200. Miles's first startup, 150. Second, 80. Third, dash. "That's ancient history," Miles cut in, standing taller, puffing his chest. "We're talking about our future, our children's future." "The same children whose tuition I pay directly to St. Andrews?" He ignored the jab, pacing like a man who mistakes movement for power. Emily rose too, clutching her phone like a prop. Then, right on cue, she pulled out a photo, the one of us at SeaWorld when she was 7. The image slid across my coffee table like a guilt offering. "These aren't debts, Claire," Miles said, stepping closer, his eyes narrowing. "They're obligations." His voice dropped low. "Serious people, serious consequences. Noon tomorrow, or things get messy. For everyone. Your reputation, your dealerships, that nice country club you love." "Are you threatening me?" I asked quietly. "In my own house?" "We're being honest about reality," Emily stammered. But I could see it. She was cracking. She'd never seen me this controlled, this cold. "Mom, please," she said, reaching out. "Tomorrow, noon, it's not negotiable." The air thickened. My migraine throbbed in rhythm with my heartbeat. His cologne, her perfume, the mix of desperation and deceit. It was suffocating. I looked at them both, my daughter, who had learned to weaponize tears, and her husband, who never pretended to be anything but a parasite. The grandfather clock chimed 9 times, cutting through the silence like a verdict. Outside, suburban life hummed on, porch lights glowing, sprinklers hissing, while inside, something sacred was ending. "Fine," I said at last. My voice came out flat, drained. "Tomorrow." Now leave. Emily mistook exhaustion for surrender. She rushed forward, arms open. I stepped back. Her hug met nothing but air. Miles extended his hand, squeezing too hard in some cheap display of dominance. "We knew you'd understand," Emily said brightly, gathering her designer bag and that staged photo. "Family first, right, Mom?" They walked out together, his hand on her lower back, steering her like a prize he hadn't earned. And for the first time in years, the silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt free. The migraine pulsed behind my eye, not pain this time, but a warning. The kind that says enough. I set the bourbon down untouched, watching the amber light ripple across the glass. For years, I'd used that same drink to swallow guilt and silence. Not tonight. Tonight, the silence meant freedom. And freedom, finally, meant consequence. Their Tesla glided down the street with that smug electric hum, disappearing around the corner like a promise I never should have trusted. I stood in the doorway, bourbon in hand, counting the seconds as their taillights faded. 5 minutes. That's how long I waited before I made the first call. It wasn't panic, it wasn't even anger anymore. It was precision, the quiet, methodical rhythm of someone who's finally had enough. They thought they'd given me a deadline. What they didn't know was that by tomorrow noon, they'd be the ones running out of time. James picked up on the second ring, just like he always had. 25 years of friendship and legal cleanup had tuned him to my patterns. "You never call after 9 unless something's gone off the rails," he said. "They finally crossed the line," I replied. "Noon tomorrow, $500,000, like I'm an ATM with a personal limit." There was no shock in his voice, only calm resignation. "The house transfer paperwork's already filed," he said. I heard papers shuffle. "They just don't know it yet. Remember, you kept the deed in your name when you paid that down payment." I exhaled, walking back through the house. It didn't look like a home anymore. It looked like a stage. Tonight had been their performance, but the final act was mine. "What about Margaret?" I asked. "She's expecting your call," James said. "Says it's about time you stopped enabling them." I hung up, feeling the migraine morph into something sharper, clarity. I went straight to my office. My laptop glowed to life, the email still open from 3 weeks ago. Villa Las Palmas, Costa Rica, March 17th to April 17th. Your reservation is confirmed. It was supposed to be a retirement planning trip. It would now serve a much more satisfying purpose. I called the airline, rebooked for the 6:45 a.m. flight. First class, 1 seat, 1 way. The safe clicked open to the familiar sound of finality. Inside were 20 years of neatly labeled folders. Every transfer, every loan, every signed lie. Miles's last agreement, dated December 2023, promising it was the final ask. I smiled. Even his signature looked dishonest. Then came the receipts, literal ones. Printed Instagram posts of Emily and Miles's hard times, shopping at the Domain, wine weekends in Napa, dinners at Uchi. Their curated suffering, framed in filters and hashtags. I found an old Amazon box in the garage, plain, brown, forgettable. Perfect. Inside, I stacked 3 document sets like a prosecutor preparing evidence. 1. The deed to their home. 2. A detailed loan history. $847,000 over 8 years, every dollar tracked. 3rd. Legal notices James had drafted months ago, just in case. At the bottom, I placed a USB drive. The security cameras I'd installed after that break-in had recorded everything tonight. Emily's crocodile tears, Miles's threats, every manipulative pause. On top, I left a note. You wanted it tomorrow. Here's what you're really getting. The packing was mechanical. 2 suitcases, light clothes, documents, meds. A brief email to Jake, my dealership manager. Family emergency. You're in charge. Details later. I paused in the hallway, facing the family portrait from 5 years ago. Laguna Gloria, sunlight, smiles that looked real back then. I lifted the frame, turned it backward, and rehung it. The blank canvas back looked truer. In the bedroom, I slid off my University of Texas ring, the one Emily used to twirl on her little fingers, and placed it inside the box. The migraine was gone now, replaced by a strange, almost electric calm. My phone buzzed. 3 messages from Emily, 2 missed calls from Miles. I deleted them all without reading, let their words vanish like their respect had. Then I made one last call. Marcus picked up on the first ring, her voice steady. James told me, she said softly. Are you really doing this? I stared at the blank wall where the portrait had hung. Yes, I said. I should have done it years ago. She's our daughter, Marcus said softly. His voice carried sadness, not judgment. Yes, I replied. But she's not the daughter we raised anymore, is she? There was a long pause, one of those heavy silences where both people already know the truth but can't bring themselves to say it out loud. She'll try to find you, Marcus warned. Let her try, I said. By the time she figures out what's really in that box, I'll be drinking coffee mount on a beach in Costa Rica, deciding whether to ever come back. And as the words left my mouth, I knew. This wasn't an escape. It was an ending years in the making. Marcus didn't argue. He never did when he knew I'd already made up my mind. The Costa Rica place, he said quietly. You'll be safe there. Think of it as a vacation, a long one. Jake can handle the dealerships. The lawyers will manage the rest. I could hear the ache in his voice, but beneath it was something else, relief. He'd seen what Emily had become. At 11:30 that night, I stood alone in my kitchen, the only light coming from the refrigerator. My grandkids' drawings were still pinned to it. Stick figures labeled Grandma and Me, a crayon version of the dealership with Grandma's work, scrawled beneath. I took one, the cookie picture, and folded it gently into my wallet. The children weren't responsible for their parents' greed. Then I carried the box to the porch and set it on the table, right where they'd be sure to find it. The doorbell camera would capture everything, their faces, their disbelief, the precise second they realized they'd lost everything but their reflection. Inside that box wasn't vengeance. It was truth, neatly organized and waiting. The clock read midnight, 6 hours until my new life began, 6.5 until theirs collapsed. When the alarm blared at 4:30 a.m., there was no hesitation. 32 years of early mornings at the dealership had trained me for this kind of discipline. The coffee maker hissed to life, Colombian dark roast, the kind Emily always said was too strong. I let the mug warm my hands. It had been an anniversary gift from her 10 years ago, back when she still remembered dates that mattered. Through the window, the Austin skyline was waking up, office buildings glowing one floor at a time, the city stretching into another day. I moved through the house like a detective at the scene of a life I was leaving behind. The master bedroom still held Marcus's mother's portrait. Emily had always wanted it, but never earned it. Her old bedroom, now my office, still displayed her high school trophies. State debate champion, National Honor Society. The daughter I'd raised versus the stranger who demanded $500,000 12 hours ago. The pool outside shimmered in the first light of dawn. I remembered teaching Emily to swim there, how she'd kicked and splashed, fearless at 4. Last summer, Miles had gotten drunk at our 4th of July party, fallen in fully clothed, and blamed me for bad pool placement. I'd even written the check for his ruined watch. That was the kind of fool I'd been. The Bentley started with a soft growl in the garage. I chose it over the Tesla. Too many memories of entitlement in that car. The streets of Westlake Hills were empty, except for the garbage trucks starting their routes. As I drove past Emily's neighborhood, I noticed how peaceful everything looked. Dark houses, quiet lawns, sleeping families, probably dreaming of how to spend money that wasn't theirs. The radio hummed softly, "Take It Easy" by the Eagles. The irony made me smile. At the intersection, I thought about calling Marcus again, but decided against it. James would handle that better. He always did. Mopac stretched ahead, quiet and endless. I passed 3 of my dealerships, rows of cars gleaming beneath streetlights, the empire I'd built from nothing. Soon it would all belong to Jake. Near 5th Street, I drove past the Velvet Room, Miles's favorite bar, the place where his gambling buddies had first dragged me into this nightmare. I almost laughed. It all started there, with whiskey, arrogance, and one stupid bet. Construction forced a detour through 2nd Street. The city I'd built my fortune in felt different in the pre-dawn dark. Emptier, colder, like a stage after the actors have left. By 5:30 a.m., the Frost Bank Tower loomed ahead. James's office, the 42nd floor. The place where the final act of this story would begin. And this time, the script was mine. The conference room smelled like coffee, paper, and inevitability. James was already there, waiting with Sophia, his paralegal, both of them framed by early sunlight, and a mountain of documents spread across the table, like evidence in a quiet war. A box of Krispy Kremes sat between us, our tradition for every major deal since 1999. Only this time, the deal was the end of an era. "You look surprisingly rested," James said, as he slid the power of attorney across the table. "First good night's sleep in months," I replied, signing it with my father's fountain pen, the one Emily never knew existed. They thought I'd finally broken under pressure. But what I'd really done was finish a plan I'd been building for 5 years. "Limited scope," James murmured, scanning the document. 60-day expiration. Only property transfers and financial restructuring. Can't have you selling her organs after all. His joke fell flat, as it should. This wasn't revenge, it was surgery. Necessary, precise, and long overdue. Sophia stepped forward with another stack of documents, efficient and calm. "The interesting part, Mrs. Emerson," she said, "is the timing. The transfer was executed yesterday, 4 p.m., 3 hours before they came to your house. Legally, Emily's home has been yours since she signed the papers in 2020. She never read past the 2nd page. I smiled, but it wasn't joy, it was poetic justice. While my daughter had been driving to my home to demand money, she'd already lost her biggest illusion. The house she flaunted on Instagram, the marble floors, the wine cellar, the captioned life of success, had never belonged to her at all. "And the financial lockdown?" I asked. "Executed at midnight," James replied. "Joint accounts frozen. Credit cards suspended. The children's tuition is untouched through December. We're not punishing them." Her Instagram turned into a slow confession. The filters cracked first, then the captions. Every post a little shorter, every smile a little thinner, until she stopped pretending anyone was still watching. He opened another folder, thicker than the rest. The nuclear option, he said. Inside were the receipts of deceit. Emily's text messages calling me a walking ATM, laughing about how pathetic I was for never saying no. Miles's signed promissory note from last year, the one promising this would be the final favor. A USB drive containing last night's footage, her staged tears, his smug threats. James continued. The prenup Miles signed includes a gambling addiction clause. Page 47, subsection 3. His lawyer didn't notice, showed up drunk at 2 in the afternoon. Sophia looked up from the papers, hesitant. Mrs. Emerson, this is remarkably thorough. 5 years of preparation, I said, and a lifetime of hoping I'd never need it. James reached under the table and placed an identical Amazon box beside the files. Insurance, he said. If she doesn't find yours, this one goes to her office Monday morning with these. He laid out photos. Miles at the casino last week, time-stamped and damning, his losses written all over his face. Marcus knows, I asked. She's known for months, James said. She helped document everything. She's as tired of enabling Emily as you are. The Costa Rica property's secure, registered through the Cayman entity. They can't touch it, no matter what lawyers they hire. I signed the last document, Emily's trust fund termination. 20 years of planning for her future, erased with a single signature. My hand trembled slightly, the only betrayal of feeling I'd allowed all morning. Bourbon? James offered, opening his desk drawer. Another of our old traditions. I shook my head. Not today. I need a clear head for the flight. At 6 a.m., I stood and shook his hand. His grip was firm, part understanding, part farewell. The elevator ride down was silent except for the hum between floors, each chime marking my descent from the life I'd built. Outside, the valet already had my Bentley running. I slipped him a $100 bill and an envelope. Jake Martinez will pick this up Monday, I said. He nodded, confused but professional. I pulled onto the road just as the sun crested over Austin, bathing the skyline in gold. My phone buzzed, Emily's name glowing on the screen, then again, then a third time. I let it ring. Highway 71 opened before me, stretching toward the airport, copper lights spilling over the hills. Each call, each buzz felt like a countdown, not to disaster, but to freedom. 10 years ago, that ringtone would have sent me running, afraid something had happened to the kids. Now I knew better. It wasn't worry, it was control, disguised as need. As I merged onto 183, I ran through my checklist one last time. Jake had full authority over the dealerships. Property managers were prepaid for 6 months. Tuition covered through December. The rest, no longer my responsibility. And for the first time in years, that thought didn't sting. It felt like release. By midnight, the airport waited, quiet, hollow, like a blank page, before the next chapter. Only 2 attendants stood by the valet stand, their breath fogging in the cold air. One of them, Tommy, looked up and smiled, surprised to see me. "Early flight, Mrs. Emerson?" "Change of plans," I said, handing him the keys and an envelope. "Jake Martinez will pick this up Monday. His info's inside. Everything all right, ma'am?" Better than it's been in years. And I meant it. I didn't look back at the Bentley. That car had carried my daughter to her wedding, my son-in-law to his next lie, and me to every painful withdrawal in between. Let someone else decide its fate. Everything I'd built, everything they'd taken for granted, was behind me now. Ahead lay nothing but air, distance, and the freedom to stop explaining myself. The first-class counter was nearly empty, just Michelle behind it. She'd checked me in, more times than I could count for business trips and corporate conferences. "Costa Rica today, Mrs. Emerson," she said, smiling politely. "I've got you on the 6:45 to San Jose." "That's right." My voice sounded calm, steady, like we were talking about weather, not reinvention. "2 bags to check, everything I need." She tagged them quickly, efficiently, and slid my passport back across the counter. I reached into my bag and pulled out a sealed envelope. "I need a favor, Michelle." "Someone will come by later, Emily Carter. She'll be upset, agitated." Michelle didn't flinch. "Any special instructions?" "Just verify her ID. There's a key inside, to a storage unit. She'll understand, or maybe she wouldn't." The unit held 20 years of her childhood. Ballet shoes, report cards, handmade cards that said "Best Mom Ever." The things she never bothered to reclaim? Let her decide if memories were worth more than money. TSA pre-check moved smoothly. Belt off, shoes in bin, laptop out. The same ritual I'd done 100 times before, except this time it felt ceremonial. Each step was a small burial, a goodbye to habit, to noise, to duty. "Where to today, Mrs. Emerson?" one of the agents asked. "Somewhere warmer." "Business or pleasure?" "Neither," I said. "Personal." Through the scanner, I collected my things. Everything found its pocket again, except my phone. That stayed off. At gate 14, the sign for Austin Java blinked softly. The barista, Kelly, her name tag said, beamed with early morning optimism. "The usual?" she asked. "Make it a large today," I said. "Special occasion?" "You could say that?" I sat by the window, the coffee warming my hands like the mug had in my kitchen 2 hours earlier. The terminal lights flickered, the hum of engines whispering through the glass. I glanced at my phone one last time. 7 missed calls from Emily, 3 from Miles, 12 texts, 2 voicemails. Her last message read, "Mom, call me back. Having weird dreams about money." I started to type a reply. Dreams and reality are often different. Deleted it. Typed again. Check the porch. Deleted that too. Finally typed, "Ask James Walker," and then deleted that as well. Instead, I powered the phone off, removed the SIM card, and dropped both into the trash beside my seat. Whatever came next was no longer mine to carry. First-class passengers for Flight 447 to San Jose, Costa Rica, now boarding. The gate agent scanned my pass with a soft smile. The jet bridge stretched ahead, long and quiet. Each step felt lighter, as if the ground itself was letting me go. At my seat, 2A window, left side, a flight attendant offered champagne. I took it, despite the early hour. Why not? It was the right kind of morning for something final. As passengers filed past, I watched them like ghosts of my former life. A honeymoon couple, laughing into each other's shoulders, reminding me of Marcus and me 35 years ago. A businessman hunched over his laptop, typing like the world depended on it. That used to be me, chasing deadlines, building an empire for someone who'd never learned what the word earned meant. An elderly woman sat in 3C, pulling yellow yarn from her bag, her hands working with slow grace. The same color yarn my mother once used before arthritis stole her joy. Then, "Excuse me." The voice hit me like a ghost stepping into daylight. Familiar, possible. And in that moment, I froze. When I looked up from my seat, I didn't need to check twice. I'd know that poise anywhere. Marcus stood in the aisle, designer luggage in hand, composed as ever, the kind of calm that only comes from surviving me once already. He looked exactly as he had during our divorce proceedings, graceful, contained, and utterly unshakable. He slid into 2B across the aisle, near enough to speak, but far enough to preserve the decade of boundaries we'd both fought to build. James called, he said simply. Thought you might need backup. It's not your fight anymore, I replied. It hasn't been for 10 years, he said, but she's still my daughter. Someone should be there when she lands. Even after everything, Marcus still had the instinct I'd long since buried, the one that confused love with rescue. There, I asked, already knowing the answer. I bought the condo next door 6 months ago, he said, smoothing his pants with the same precision he used in court years ago. James found it, negotiated the price, handled everything. I've been planning this as long as you have. The captain's voice came over the intercom, announcing a slight delay for the last passenger. My chest tightened. For a split second, I imagined Emily, storming through security, demanding access, piecing together my absence too soon. Or worse, Miles. The door opened, but it was only a businessman, sweaty and apologetic, stumbling toward economy. My breath returned. Did you tell her? I asked. Marcus's expression didn't shift. Tell her what? That her mother finally stopped enabling her? That her husband's a parasite? That she's become exactly what we swore she'd never be? He gave a soft sigh. No, Claire. She'll figure it out herself. Today, actually. The door sealed shut with that pneumatic finality that always feels like destiny. 7:05 a.m., pushback. 7:15 a.m., engines roaring, wheels lifting, gravity giving up its hold. Austin shrank beneath us, the lakes and hills dissolving into abstract geometry. 30 years of my life, homes, dealerships, memories, shrinking into patterns of blue and green. Somewhere down there, Emily's alarm was going off. In 4 hours, she'd arrive at my empty house. In 5, she'd find the box. In 6, the illusion of control she'd built around herself would collapse completely. The flight attendant appeared beside me, offering breakfast menus with the same smile I'd seen on 100 flights before. Business or pleasure? She asked. I looked at her for a moment, then said, neither. It's justice. Marcus laughed, a real unguarded laugh I hadn't heard in years. That's the Claire I married, he said, smiling over his coffee. Welcome back. Below, Texas disappeared beneath the clouds. At exactly noon, the moment Emily expected to see $500,000 land in her account, I was having lunch over the Caribbean, sunlight spilling through the cabin windows, Marcus reading beside me. For the first time in decades, there was no tension between us, no half-finished arguments. Just two people, quietly free from a daughter we'd lost long before the money ran out. I found out what happened next the way I found out most things about Emily, through other people's eyes, cameras, witnesses, digital traces of a life I'd stopped being invited into. James sent the footage 3 days later. I watched it from the balcony of the villa, the Pacific stretching endlessly beyond the screen. The waves rolled in, soft and steady, a strangely peaceful soundtrack to my daughter's unraveling. The timestamp read 12 p.m. sharp, the same moment my phone had buzzed with a message from James. Your transaction has been completed. The house transfer was official, the past erased in ink. At that same moment, I was ordering ceviche. Emily, most likely, was still asleep, dreaming on linens she hadn't paid for, under a roof that was never hers. According to James's meticulous notes, she left her house at 11:30. Starbucks at 11:47. A $7 caramel latte charged to a card I'd canceled at midnight. The charge would decline Monday morning, her last purchase on my dime. When justice finally arrived, it wore a cardigan and garden gloves. Mrs. Chen, my neighbor for 15 years, was the quiet witness to the entire collapse. At 12:15 p.m., she called James in her perfectly measured English, still crisp, after 4 decades in Texas. "Mr. Walker," she said, "they are here. Emily and the gambling man. They don't know I am watching." The security footage confirmed it. Timestamp 12:15. Emily's white Mercedes glided into my driveway with the confidence of someone arriving to collect an inheritance, not consequences. For decades she'd rehearsed entitlement. Now she was about to perform her downfall, with an audience she didn't even know she had. Emily adjusted her lipstick in the mirror, same bold red she'd worn the day she begged for her first car at 16, for her wedding fund at 28, and for that $500,000 loan at 35. Some colors never fade, they just stain. Miles checked his phone, not for texts, but basketball scores. James later confirmed he was still gambling, likely plotting his next bet with what he thought would be my money. They walked to the door like they owned it. Miles carried a $12,000 Hermes briefcase, empty, waiting for cash that would never come. 12:16. Emily rang the bell. Once, politely, almost shyly. Not the demanding triple press she used yesterday. 10 seconds passed. Then another ring, longer, louder. When the door didn't open, Miles cupped his hands to the glass, peering into my empty kitchen. "Her car's gone," Emily said, loud enough for Mrs. Chen to hear from her rose garden. "So, she's got 5, Miles replied, his tone sharp with arrogance. "The lights are on timers," Emily muttered, realizing it too late. "Maybe she went to the bank," she said, clinging to hope. "You said noon. It's barely past." 12:18. She tried her key. It scraped uselessly against the new lock. James's paralegal had replaced them at 7 a.m., 3 hours after my flight left. The confusion on her face, captured by the camera, was worth every sleepless night she'd caused. At 12:20, Miles spotted the box. Plain Amazon packaging, my handwriting across the top, EMILY. She opened it casually, expecting a check, a letter, maybe an apology. But the first document she pulled out was the deed to her house. Her face changed in real time, like a time-lapse of fruit rotting. Confusion, disbelief, horror. She dropped the paper. Miles snatched it before it hit the ground. "What do you mean it's in her name?" he shouted, his voice carrying all the way to Mrs. Chen's tomatoes. Emily reached for the next set of papers, spreadsheets, line after line of transactions. Every loan, every wire, every gift total. $1.3 million over 8 years. Her hands trembled as she reached the bottom line. Then came the photos. Miles at the Palms Casino last Tuesday. Time-stamped, exhausted, losing. Next, the promissory note he'd signed in December. This will be the last time. Then her own text messages, highlighted in yellow. Mom's too pathetic to say no. She always caves. And my personal favorite, I deserve this money more than she does. 12:23. Her phone buzzed. One alert, then another, then another. Credit cards declining in rapid succession. Chase, Amex, Nordstrom, all canceled at midnight. All still under my name. Miles pulled out his phone next, calling someone. Later, James confirmed it was his bookie. The man apparently told him what I already knew. Credit requires collateral, not excuses. 12:25. Emily found the USB drive. She plugged it into her phone, hands trembling. Her own voice echoed through the speaker, cold and clear. "Just take whatever she gives you. She's too pathetic to say no." Then Miles, "These aren't bank people, Claire. They're serious individuals." The final file was the prenup, page 47, subsection 3, highlighted in yellow and circled in red. Immediate forfeiture of marital assets if gambling debts exceed $50,000. Miles had passed that threshold 3 years ago. At 12:27, the briefcase hit the door with a violent crack. The handle snapped off, her mess leather scattering across the porch. And finally, her sobbing. Not the delicate tears she used to manipulate me. These were raw animal sounds, the kind you make when you realize you've cornered yourself. Mrs. Chen described it best in her follow-up message to James. The daughter cried. The man shouted. Then silence. I think truth finally won, and it had. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it stands 4 feet 11 in a flowered sun hat. At 12:28 p.m., Mrs. Chen, my neighbor for 15 years, stepped out of her garden, phone raised like a weapon of righteousness. I'm calling the police if you don't leave, she announced, steady as stone. This is my mother's house, Emily screamed, mascara turning her face into abstract art. Not anymore, Mrs. Chen replied. Mrs. Emerson sent me the transfer notice this morning. You're trespassing. And just like that, the woman who'd once ruled rooms with entitlement found herself powerless on her own doorstep, stripped of everything but truth. 12:30 p.m. Miles gave up first. He stomped to the Mercedes, slamming the door hard enough to rattle Mrs. Chen's begonias. Emily stayed, gathering the scattered papers that represented her lost fortune, each page fluttering across my porch like confetti from a celebration she was no longer invited to. A few papers blew away. I didn't mind. The wind would take care of what I no longer needed to. Miles peeled out, tire marks scorched into my driveway, damage that the property manager would bill to their account. And while all this unfolded at 12:30, I was sitting oceanside in Costa Rica, watching sunlight dance on the waves. The waiter smiled politely. Celebrating something, senora? A graduation? Yes, I said, smiling into my coffee. My own. By Monday, James had the epilogue. Emily came back Sunday morning with a locksmith in tow. He refused the job after checking ownership. She tried scaling the fence next, made it halfway before the security team arrived. The police gave her a trespass warning. Miles never returned. He'd moved to his brother's house in Dallas, divorce papers already filed. 3 days later, I was on the balcony with Marcus, watching pelicans dive for fish when James called again. Do you want to see the footage? He asked. No, I said. The screamings finally stopped. But he sent another clip anyway, a parking garage recording. I watched it from my deck, the ocean murmuring behind me as my daughter's life imploded on my laptop screen. The timestamp read 7 p.m., March 16th, exactly when I'd been eating my first peaceful dinner in years. Their white Mercedes screeched into the underground lot beneath her condo. Miles's rage was visible even without sound. He slammed the car door so hard the alarm wailed, lights flashing like a distress signal no one would ever answer. Emily ran after him, clutching the documents like evidence from a crime scene. Because that's exactly what they were. Proof of the murder of their own delusions. Inside the elevator, James's paralegal had somehow captured the audio. Miles's voice, tense and breaking. You said it was commercial real estate. It was, he snapped. The casino was just stress relief. Stress relief, Emily shrieked. Then came the slap of papers hitting skin, followed by the gentle ding of closing doors and the echo of her sobbing. By 7:30, Emily had gone live on Instagram. James's paralegal archived the whole thing before she deleted it. There she was, mascara streaked, wineglass shaking in her hand. When someone you trust betrays you, she began dramatically, holding the house deed up to the camera. In the background, Miles was packing, throwing clothes into a suitcase. When your whole life is built on lies, she choked mid-sentence, as the wine glass flew, shattering against their wedding photo. Stream ended. 47 viewers watched Emily Carter, once the social queen of Westlake, unravel in real time. 3 of them were employees from my dealerships. They sent the video straight to James. Monday morning, Miles's mother left a voicemail at my office. James archived it, of course. "Mrs. Emerson," her voice trembled. "Miles has been missing since Saturday night. Emily says you've kidnapped him." A pause, thick with disbelief. "I know that's ridiculous, but do you know where my son is?" I didn't, but I knew where he'd been. He'd spent those hours calling anyone who'd ever owed him a favor. Country club friends, old college buddies, even an ex-girlfriend's father. Each call shorter than the last, each rejection heavier than the one before. His mother remembered his final words on that last call, voice cracking. "It's not just money anymore. These people don't play." Between 8:30 and 10 p.m., Emily turned to Google for salvation. Using my old Amazon account to access Wi-Fi, James later sent me the list, each search a breadcrumb trail of panic. Can mother take back Gift House, Texas? How to break power of attorney? Emergency bankruptcy lawyer Austin. Cheap divorce attorney, no money down. The last one hurt more than it should have. Not because she wanted to leave Miles, God knows that was overdue, but because even in her downfall, her first instinct was to find someone else to fund it. Around 10 p.m., Rachel, her best friend since college, called Marcus, shaking. She watched the whole thing, Rachel said, the entire USB. 5 years of holidays, birthdays, and family dinners recorded. Emily calling me a walking ATM at her 30th birthday. Miles joking about bleeding the old woman dry at Thanksgiving. Emily coaching him on how to manipulate me before our anniversary dinner. That Christmas toast, both of them raising glasses, thanking good old mom, the family bank. She played it 3 times, Rachel said, voice cracking, like she couldn't believe it was real. At 10:17 p.m., James's monitoring system lit up with a flurry of declined transactions. Chase Sapphire declined. Amex Platinum suspended. Nordstrom invalid. Starbucks deactivated. Even her coffee stopped loving her back. And as one last insult to irony, a DoorDash driver filed a complaint the next day. Apparently, she'd ordered dinner she could no longer pay for. By the time Emily's story hit Facebook, it had already stopped being a family matter. It had become folklore. The downfall of Westlake's golden daughter, live-streamed and memed into Austin gossip legend. It started with a sushi order, $200 worth. She'd planned to pay cash, except there wasn't any left. The driver threatened small claims court while Miles was across town, pawning her jewelry for gas money. It was poetic in a way. Every luxury she'd ever flaunted, now turning on her. Every win, now costing double on the way down. Between 11 p.m. and midnight, Emily's Facebook page became a modern-day confession booth. Posts went up and disappeared within minutes, but screenshots spread faster than wildfire, betrayed by blood. When your mother chooses money over family. Anyone know employment lawyers? Selling designer bags? Serious inquiries only. The comments were merciless. Her cousin, "Didn't you just post from Cabo last week?" A high school friend, "Thought your mom bought you everything." A former co-worker, "Didn't you quit your job after the wedding?" While her world crumbled online, Marcus and I sat on a beach deck in Costa Rica, playing poker under the hum of a local guitarist. I tipped the musician $100 to play Take It Easy by the Eagles. Marcus smirked. "You're terrible at poker," he said, collecting my chips. "I'm free," I replied, and meant it. At 11:45 p.m., Mrs. Chen called James again. "She's back," she whispered, "just sitting in her car." Not trying to get in, just sitting. Emily's white Mercedes idled in my driveway, headlights off. She didn't rage or cry this time, just stared at the dark windows like they might suddenly light up and forgive her. She sat there for over an hour. When she finally left around 1 a.m., Mrs. Chen said she looked 10 years older, 10 hours heavier. By midnight, March 16th, Emily had lost access to $2.3 million in assets, discovered $500,000 in hidden debt, learned her husband had gambled away their savings, realized she'd never owned her home, and found out her mother had known it all along. James asked if I felt guilty for recording them all those years. "The only thing I regret," I said, "is not starting sooner." Sunday, March 17th. Security footage caught Emily standing outside my office building for 2 hours, pressing the intercom button over and over, like a child calling for someone who'd already moved on. She called old employees from the stolen company directory. Jake blocked her after the third attempt. The rest simply didn't answer. By noon, she was at Austin Bergstrom Airport, the same terminal where I'd once dropped her off for college visits, where I'd welcomed her home from her honeymoon. Now she stood there, begging for passenger information. TSA refused. American Airlines cited privacy. When she claimed family emergency, the agent checked the record. Passenger specifically requested no contact. James later sent me the footage of her face crumbling when she heard those words. Her final Uber rides, before the account was deactivated, traced a sad map across Austin. My old golf club, membership revoked. Morton's Steakhouse, haven't seen Mrs. Emerson lately. My barbershop on South Congress closed Sundays. Still, she stood outside, peering through the windows as if the ghost of my hair clippings might tell her where I'd gone. Monday, March 18, her legal education day. 4 law firms, 4 meetings, 1 result. "These are ironclad," said the first. "You'll need a $10,000 retainer," said the second. "Do you have access to funds?" asked the third. The fourth simply shook his head. At 3 p.m., she stormed into my flagship dealership on Research Boulevard. The entire confrontation ended up on social media. Jake Martinez, 6 feet 4 inches, ex-Marine, stood calm as a statue while she accused him of kidnapping, elder abuse, and theft. When she threw her latte at the glass door, the crowd started filming. The brown coffee stain remained for 3 days. Jake said he left it there on principle. At 5 p.m., another voicemail came from Miles's mother, the same one James had archived. "Mrs. Emerson, Miles is still missing. Emily says you've kidnapped him. I know it's insane, but please, do you know where my son is?" I didn't, but I knew the kind of people who were now asking him that same question. Tuesday, March 19. The real creditors arrived, not bankers or lawyers, but 2 men in Italian leather. They knocked politely, spoke softly, left a plain white business card with a single phone number. No threats, no demands, just silence heavy enough to crush a conscience. Emily called Miles 47 times that day. His phone stayed off. Her Instagram stories that afternoon told the rest. The pawn shop tour. Designer bags worth $30,000, $8,000 cash. Jewelry worth $50,000, $15,000 cash. Miles's 3 watches, $40,000 retail, $12,000 cash. Still $465,000 short. That evening, Marcus's phone rang. It was Emily. Marcus recorded it, legally and for my sake. "Dad, did you know?" Emily's voice sounded smaller than I remembered. "About Miles's gambling? 6 months ago?" "Yes," Marcus said. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Would you have listened?" Silence. Then Emily's voice cracked. "I need money." "So did I," Marcus replied quietly. "During the divorce, you told me to be independent." The line went quiet. Emily's sobs broke through, then the click of Marcus ending the call. And just like that, every bridge Emily had once stood on finally burned itself down. By Wednesday, March 20th, Emily walked into James's office, dressed for a life that no longer existed. The same designer dress from her Cabo photos. The same smile she'd once used to disguise debt as glamour. But now it looked more like armor made of denial. It was the same conference room where I'd signed the papers, the same chair where Miles had spread his lies. And now she was the one sitting in that seat, alone. The tables hadn't just turned, they'd reset completely. For the first time, Emily was facing the truth without filters, followers, or a mother to hide behind. James didn't comfort her. He didn't need to. He simply opened the files one by one with surgical precision. The power of attorney dated months before her emergency. The house deed trail tracing her signature from 2020. The gift tax returns proving every cent had been given freely, not loaned. And finally Miles's promissory note, his signature bold, undeniable, damning. Emily's voice cracked under the weight of reality. "She's my mother. She has to help me." James's tone was quiet, factual. "Legally, she doesn't." "What about child support?" she pressed, desperation sharpening her voice. "The grandchildren's trusts are separate," he said. "They're safe. Untouchable until 18. Her eyes flashed. "This is elder abuse." "She's 62, James replied. Sound mind, left voluntarily. Then came the blow that took her breath away. James's tablet lit up. Miles' credit report, accidentally visible. Emily leaned forward, and her world split open. $500,000 in gambling debts, $200,000 in hidden personal loans. Another $100,000 in secret credit cards. And an attempted second mortgage on her own house, denied of course, since she'd never legally owned it. James slid one final envelope across the mahogany table. Mrs. Emerson authorized one last gift. Inside was a cashier's check for $10,000 and a handwritten note. For a fresh start. "Mom." She tore it in half without hesitation. The pieces fluttered to the carpet like dead leaves in autumn. Then, with trembling hands, she asked the only question that still made sense to her. "Is there another?" "No," James said gently. "There never will be." While Emily's world imploded under fluorescent office lights, mine had grown lighter under a Costa Rican sun. Children on the beach were teaching me Spanish, laughing as I mispronounced every word. Claire Larica, they called me, Claire the Rich. My blood pressure had dropped 20 points. I slept through the night for the first time in years, and for 2 full days I hadn't thought about Emily at all, until Marcus mentioned her name. That night, James sent his final report. Emily left my office at noon, sat in the lobby until closing, 9 hours. The guard said she asked if you ever talked about her. I told him to say yes, that you spoke fondly. She said thank you and left. That night in Costa Rica, I dreamed of Emily as a little girl, wobbling on her first bike. This time, when I let go, she didn't fall. She just kept pedaling away until she disappeared. April 3rd, the headline arrived, "Local businessman missing." After financial scandal, Miles Carter, 38, last seen March 19th. Wife filed the report. Police found no signs of foul play. His car discovered in long-term parking. A ticket to Vegas, purchased, never used. 2 days later, April 5th, the creditors returned to Emily's condo. Polite but firm, they left behind a photo. Miles at a casino table, chips scattered, debt totaling $500,000. Emily filed for a restraining order. The judge asked if she owed money. She did. Order denied. By that weekend, her garage sale became neighborhood theater. Items once reserved for charity galas now lined her driveway under the Texas sun. Bills piled faster than apologies. The house went, then the car. Every luxury she'd borrowed demanded its payment. Miles's custom golf clubs, $200. Waterford crystal set, $50. Wedding china, untouched, half price. Her wedding dress, still wrapped in tissue, no takers. Someone posted on Facebook, "A year ago she hosted that autism fundraiser here. Raised 50 grand. Now she's selling the table it was served on." By mid-April, her job hunt had become frantic. 47 applications in 2 weeks. Interior design firms said the gap was too long. Retail stores said she was overqualified. Finally, Nordstrom hired her, the same store she'd once bragged about spending thousands in each month. Starting pay, $15 an hour plus commission. Even the universe has a sense of humor. Then came April 15th, an eviction notice taped to her condo door, 3 months behind on payments. Miles had handled the finances badly, $4,500 monthly, $13,500 overdue, plus late fees. And just like that, the woman who once lived for luxury now owed the world more than she could ever repay. By May, the daughter who once measured love in designer labels was now wearing a Nordstrom name tag, her own. The same hands that once signed checks now folded blouses, earning $15 an hour and a quiet kind of dignity she'd never known before. When she came home that night, still wearing her new tag, the eviction notice was waiting. Deadline, May 15th, pay or vacate. It was the full circle she never saw coming. Luxury traded for labor, privilege replaced by purpose, and a mother who'd finally stopped rescuing her long enough for her to learn how to swim. The divorce filing from April 18th read like a corporate breakup. Cold, clinical, emotionless. Abandonment cited as cause. Miles Carter must be served. Location unknown. The judge allowed a publication notice in 3 local papers. $500 Emily didn't have. She used her new employee discount to buy a plain gray suit for court, the first outfit she'd purchased with earned money in 7 years. While Emily pieced together her life from the ashes, I built something entirely new in Costa Rica. My days had rhythm again. Sunrise with howler monkeys. Coffee overlooking the Pacific. Morning swims in water so clear I could see my reflection ripple back at me. Lunch at Manuel's Beach Bar, where no one cared about dealerships or daughters. The locals called me Claire La Rica, Claire the Rich, but they meant it differently than I once did. I taught English to their children. They taught me Spanish in return. Their parents invited me to dinners filled with laughter and stories, not transactions. No one asked for advice, investments, or favors, only for someone to pass the salt. Marcus took up painting. His seascapes were dreadful, but they made us laugh until our stomachs hurt. We hadn't laughed together since Emily turned 16, since she'd started seeing us as resources instead of parents. It wasn't romantic anymore, it was something better. Two survivors sharing the same lifeboat, finally at peace. The doctor in San Jose could hardly believe the chart. Blood pressure down 30 points, weight down 20 pounds, 3 fewer medications. What changed? I smiled. Everything and nothing. I stopped funding other people's lives and started living my own. Then, April 25th, TMZ. Missing Texas businessman spotted in Mexico. A blurry photo of Miles behind a rental car counter in Juarez, thinner, wedding ring gone, extradition unlikely for civil debts. Emily's comment beneath the post was only 2 words: good riddance. April 27th, she finally used the airport storage key. Inside, every piece of her childhood I'd ever saved. Photo albums she thought I'd thrown away. Her grandmother's jewelry, once thought lost in the divorce. And a $50,000 savings bond in her name, set to mature in a year. Beneath it, a note in my handwriting. For when you remember who you were before money mattered. M.O.M. On April 28th, James forwarded me her email. Mr. Walker, please tell my mother I found the storage unit. I understand now. I'm sorry, I'm working at Nordstrom. I'm surviving. Maybe that's the lesson. Don't tell her I asked, but is she happy? Emily James called to ask if he should respond. The next evening, as the sun bled gold over the Pacific, I gave him my answer. Tell her yes. Tell her the bond was her mother's idea. And tell her I'll be here when she's ready to visit. But she pays her own way. That night, I sat on the beach watching Costa Rican families. 3 generations laughing, talking, playing in the surf. No one staring at phones. No one chasing status, just connection. They were poor by American standards, but rich by every measure that mattered. Emily texted James later that night. Thank you for telling me. Maybe Christmas if I save enough. It was the first time in 5 years she'd mentioned saving for anything. April 30th, Manuel's band played at the bar. They dedicated a song to Claire Larica. Not the Eagles this time, but a local folk tune about a woman who found treasure by giving everything away. Marcus translated softly beside me, tears in his eyes. It wasn't really about me. It was about all of us. Runaways from our own mistakes, finally finding peace in what was left. Later that evening, James called again. Emily sold the Mercedes, bought a 10-year-old Honda, opened a savings account, posted on Instagram about the dignity of honest work. Should I keep monitoring her? No, I said, the lesson's been learned. The teaching's over. The learning, though, was just beginning. By May 5th, James told me Emily had exhausted every option. The eviction notice, posted April 15th, was still on her door. She'd pleaded with property management, offered partial payments, even tried to negotiate directly with the building's owner. She never knew I'd sold that property in January, anticipating this exact moment. Security footage showed her that Saturday morning, renting the smallest U-Haul available. 12 hours of loading, alone. Mrs. Peterson, the neighbor she used to mock for her noisy grandkids, offered help from her balcony. Emily refused, her pride, though fractured, still intact. She wrestled with the leather couch she'd once bragged about buying with my money, dragging it inch by inch toward the truck, while neighbors watched from behind their blinds. The storage unit she could afford barely fit everything except her clothes and laptop. 1 month prepaid, cheapest facility in Austin. Pure irony. Her rented unit sat directly beside the one I'd left for her, the one holding the bond. And maybe, just maybe, that was the real inheritance all along. By the time Miles's final letter arrived, Emily had already stopped expecting rescue. What she didn't know, what none of them ever do, is that sometimes the real ending doesn't come with a confrontation. It comes with a piece of mail. On May 10th, the registered letter from Juarez arrived. The postal worker who delivered it later gave an affidavit for Emily's divorce file, describing how her hands shook as she signed for it. Inside that envelope wasn't closure, just confirmation. The same arrogance that had once filled her house was now written in fading ink. The letter was one page, Miles's handwriting unmistakable. Emily, by the time you read this, I'll have a new name and a new life. The men looking for me won't find me. Don't try to either. I'm sorry about your mother's money, but you were the one who said she'd never cut you off. We both gambled. We both lost. The prenup your mom made me sign means you get nothing from me anyway. Consider us even. Emma. That was the last anyone ever heard from him. Her Nordstrom manager called James 2 days later, worried. Emily hadn't shown up for 3 shifts. When she finally returned, she'd dropped 10 pounds. Her eyes hollow, voice barely there. The manager almost fired her on the spot, until Emily, for the first time in her life, begged. She promised perfect attendance and meant it. May 15th, eviction day. Her new address, a studio apartment above a taco shop on East Riverside, the same neighborhood she once called too sketchy for college visits, 400 square feet, window AC that rattled like dice in a gambler's hand, shared laundry in a damp basement that smelled like defeat, $700 a month, cash only, no credit check required. May 16th, the second job, Denny's night shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Irony thick as syrup, it was the same Denny's where, 2 years earlier, she'd demanded to speak to the manager over cold eggs. Now she served the same crowd, drunk students, tired nurses, late shift cabbies, for $13 an hour plus tips. Her life became a loop. Wake at 5 a.m., Nordstrom 6 till 2, sleep 3 till 4. Denny's 6 p.m. till 3 a.m. repeat. Sundays off for laundry and meal prep, rice, beans, and the cheapest chicken she could find. May 24th. Marcus visited. His voice trembled when he called me that evening. She's different, he said. She's quieter. Emily's studio had one thing on the wall. Our photo from her college graduation. The designer handbags were gone, replaced by Walmart basics, 20 pounds gone. Cheekbones sharp as unspoken truths. Their conversation went like this. Marcus, I helped your mother plan this. Emily, I know. Marcus, are you angry? Emily, I was. Now I'm just tired. Marcus, the bond was my idea. Insurance for when you hit bottom. Emily, this is bottom. Marcus, no. Bottom is when you stop blaming everyone else. There was a pause. Then Emily whispered, I was a terrible daughter. No, Marcus said softly, you were a spoiled one. And spoiled can be unlearned Memorial Day weekend, Austin heat. Emily worked a double shift at Nordstrom, time and a half. Then Denny's afterward, packed with drunk partygoers. That night, she made $300 in tips, the most money she'd touched since March. At 7:15 a.m., the Denny's security camera caught her sitting in her Honda, counting crumpled bills, crying. Not the performative sobs I used to know, but the quiet kind. She later wrote to James, it's the first money I've truly earned. No manipulation, no family name, just work. Her phone logs showed a text she typed but never sent. Mom, I made $300 tonight by myself. I know you won't see this. I know you're gone, but I wanted you to know. I'm starting to understand. She deleted it, but the phone company kept the record. Meanwhile, in Costa Rica, the rainy season had begun. I'd started volunteering at the local school, teaching English. The kids called me Teacher Clara. No one knew who I'd been or what I'd owned. Marcus kept painting his terrible landscapes, selling them to tourists for $20, and donating it all to the school. Our dinners were simple: rice, fish, plantains. Better than any country club steak I'd ever paid for. That week, James sent his final report. Emily's working 2 jobs, living in a studio, surviving. And for the first time in her life, that was enough. By May 31st midnight, Emily's story had come full circle. The girl who once ordered $200 brunches was now pouring coffee at a Denny's on East Riverside. Serving the kind of people she used to pretend didn't exist. The Memorial Day crowd stumbled in loud and careless. She tied her apron, grabbed her notepad, and approached a table of drunk fraternity boys, the exact kind Miles once called his brothers. "Welcome to Denny's. What can I get started for you?" One of them blinked in disbelief. "Wait, Emily Carter? From the country club?" She didn't flinch. "That's me. Now, what can I get you?" Later, James told me. That moment changed everything. Serving pancakes to the ghosts of her old life, Emily stopped being my daughter and started becoming herself. June arrived with Texas heat, thick as syrup. Emily had found her rhythm. At Nordstrom, customers started asking for her by name. She smiled now, genuinely, and people noticed. At Denny's, the night shift nurses adored her. She remembered each of their coffee orders without writing them down. No sugar for Beth, extra cream for Susan, decaf for Maria. She was trying to quit. Her coworker told James, "She's down to a size 4 from a 10, not from dieting, from working." Miles walked across retail floors, trays carried through sleepless nights, meals skipped because the budget said so. Her cheekbones were sharper now, but her eyes, those finally softened. Awareness had replaced entitlement. Sundays became sacred. Laundry at 6 a.m. when the machines were free. Groceries at the Asian market on North Lamar, half the price of Whole Foods. Meal prep in her tiny kitchen with one working burner. And then, unexpectedly, the library. She'd started reading financial literacy books, taking notes in a black and white composition notebook like a college freshman chasing her first dream. June 10th, Tuesday. Checking mail in the lobby was routine now, mostly bills, credit card offers. For people with good credit she no longer had. But that day, there was a cream envelope. No return address. Costa Rican postmark. Her hands trembled when she recognized my handwriting. She didn't make it back to her apartment. She sat right there on the lobby stairs and opened it. 3 pages, my careful script. The same handwriting that had signed her birthday cards and the checks that had built her prison. The letter read, "Emily, I'm writing this on a beach in Costa Rica. A little girl here reminds me of you at 7, fearless, curious, demanding the world bend to her will. The difference is, she's grateful. I don't blame you for who you became. I created you. Every time you cried, I wrote a check. Every time you demanded, I delivered. I thought that was love. It was actually weakness. Your father says you're working 2 jobs now. Good work teaches what inheritance never could. That money you earn represents time, effort, sacrifice. Every dollar carries weight my gifts never had. I'm not coming back to the woman I was. That woman was a checkbook with a heartbeat. but I might come back to meet the woman you're becoming. The storage unit key, that was your mother's idea. She said you'd need something to hope for. The bond matures April 2026. By then, you'll either have learned to live without it, or you'll still be waiting for someone to save you. Either way, you'll know who you are. I love you, Emily. Always have. But love without respect is just pity. Earn my respect. More importantly, earn your own. P.S. Your grandmother would be proud of you working at Denny's. She was a waitress when she met Grandpa. You never knew that. I was too ashamed to tell you. Now I'm ashamed that I was ashamed. Emily folded the letter slowly, as if afraid it might dissolve. For the next week, she carried it in her apron pocket, creased, smudged, and worn at the edges, like a lifeline. And maybe, for the first time in her life, it was. By June, something extraordinary had happened. Emily had stopped pretending to change and actually started becoming someone new. Her coworker at Denny's told James that Emily would take her breaks in the restroom, reading my letter over and over until the ink smudged from her tears. But they weren't angry tears anymore. They were the kind that come from waking up for the first time in your own life. She began asking her coworkers questions, real ones, about their families, their struggles, their dreams. And for the first time, she actually listened. One night she called Marcus. "Why didn't anyone ever tell me Grandma was a waitress?" Marcus's voice was calm but sharp. "Because, Emily, you never asked about anyone's struggle, only their success." Emily paused. "What else don't I know?" "Everything that matters." The change showed everywhere, even at work. Her Nordstrom performance review read like a rebirth. "Emily has become our top associate. Customers trust her. She connects with people, saving for something special. She understands sacrifice now." Promotion followed, department lead, $18 an hour. The first advancement she'd earned, not inherited. June 25th, Emily wrote back. 5 days, dozens of drafts. Marcus later shared the letter with me. "Mom, I'm writing this at 3 a.m. between shifts. My feet hurt, my back aches, and I've never been happier. Not champagne and shopping happy, real happy. Happy like I earned this sandwich. Happy like customers asked for me by name. Happy like I paid my own rent. I was furious when you left. I thought you abandoned me. Now I see you freed me. Freed me from myself, from who we both let me become. Miles gone, good riddance. He was my mirror, reflecting back everything I hated in myself. We were parasites, feeding on your kindness. When the host disappeared, so did we. I don't want your money anymore. That's not bravado, it's truth. I'll use the bond someday, sure, maybe for a better apartment. But not as a rescue, as seed money for the life I'm building. Come back when you're ready, not to save me, just to see me, the real me, the one buried under designer labels and demands. P.S. I kept one thing from my old life. Our photo from my graduation. You looked so proud. I want to earn that look again." The letter reached me on July 2nd, Independence Day week. The timing couldn't have been more poetic. I sat on the beach reading it as the waves erased footprints from the sand. Marcus leaned over my shoulder. "She gets it," she said softly. "Getting it and living it are different things," I replied. "Give her time." "How much? How long did it take you?" "I'm still changing." "Exactly." June 30th, 11 p.m. Emily began her shift. Her regular, an elderly man who always sat alone, ordered his usual. But that night, he looked up from his menu and said, "You look lighter, dear." Unburdened somehow. Emily smiled, a real one this time. I'm learning to carry my own weight instead of expecting others to carry it for me. He left a $20 tip on an $8 check. The note read, "For your education fund, a fellow traveler." That same night, under a quiet Costa Rican sky, I made a decision. In August, I'd return, not to rescue her, not to test her, just to witness who she was when no one was paying her way. August 15th, 2025. I landed in Austin, same gate I'd departed from in March. 5 months had felt like 5 years. Marcus stayed behind. "This is your journey to finish," he told me. My rental car was a modest sedan, the kind of car Claire Emerson would have once sneered at. I drove past my old dealerships, thriving without me. Good. Past Emily's former condo, now home to a happy young family whose laughter didn't cost them a cent. Checked into a Hampton Inn, not the Four Seasons. Simple, clean, enough. I called James. "I'm here." "She doesn't know?" "No, I want to see her natural life, not a performance." Nordstrom. Until 6 at 4 p.m., I stood in Nordstrom at Barton Creek Mall, hidden behind a display. Across the floor, Emily knelt beside an elderly woman, adjusting a shoe strap, patient, kind, unhurried. The old Emily would have called another associate for that. This one, she moved with quiet grace, strong, purposeful, lean but steady. Her hair pulled back in a ponytail, her face bare of makeup, and somehow she looked more beautiful than she ever had before. Because for once, it was honest. At 5:30, I approached her counter like any other customer. "Excuse me, I'm looking for comfortable walking shoes." She turned, froze. For a moment, 5 months of distance and transformation hung between us like fragile glass. Then she whispered, "Mom." "Hello, Emily." Neither of us moved. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed, not bitterly, not defensively, just laughed. "You're shopping at Nordstrom," she said. "You haven't bought your own clothes in 20 years. Things change." "Yes," she said softly. "They do." She couldn't leave the floor, so I stayed, as her customer. We talked carefully while she showed me shoes. "You look different," I said. "I am different." Poverty's an effective diet plan. It's not poverty, it's reality. Same thing when you've lived in fantasy. When I paid, she quietly applied her employee discount, pride wrapped in small gestures. "I get off at 6, then Denny's at 11. Dinner between?" "I can't afford dinner out." "I'll cook." "Where do you live?" "It's not what you're used to." "Neither am I." At 6:30, I climbed the narrow stairs to her studio. She'd changed out of her uniform into worn jeans and a t-shirt, both clean but clearly second-hand. The apartment was small but potless, 1 chair, 1 stool. She gave me the chair. "It's not much," she said. "It's yours," I told her. "That makes it everything." On the wall, our graduation photo. On the counter, my letter, carefully folded. Beside it, financial planning books from the library. We cooked pasta with what she had, simple, fresh. She watched me quietly, like a child remembering something she'd forgotten. "Dad says you're teaching in Costa Rica, volunteering, English lessons. For free, for free?" The best things I've done lately have been free. We ate at her small table, plastic plates, mismatched forks, better than any country club meal I'd ever bought. Then she said it. "I hated you." "I know. I mean really hated you. Wanted you dead." "I know. How could you leave me with nothing? How could I leave you with everything? It was killing you. It was killing both of us." Silence followed, not awkward, just necessary. At 9 p.m., she started getting ready for Denny's. I handed her an envelope. This isn't rescue, it's investment inside. A $5,000 check and a contract. What's this? A business proposal. You work for me, not dealerships. Something new. Financial literacy for young adults. You know better than anyone the cost of not knowing I'm not qualified. You're uniquely qualified. You've lived both sides, rich without wisdom, poor with awakening. She read the contract carefully. Fair pay, no favoritism, performance-based raises. This isn't charity. No, this is business. You fail, you're fired, daughter or not. And if I succeed, then we both have. At 10:30, she had to leave. She hugged me, the first real one in years. No manipulation, no performance, just connection. I'll call tomorrow after I read it again. Read it 3 times, I said. That's another lesson. I'm learning. We both are. 1 month later, Emily accepted the position, but kept her Denny's shifts on weekends. Just in case, she'd said, smart. Her first financial literacy class had 12 attendees. A year later, she was speaking at colleges. 2 years after that, she was writing curriculum for schools. When the bond matured, she didn't touch it, used it later as a house down payment instead. Not from inheritance, from savings. Miles never came back. Rumor said he'd married a widow in Cancun. The cycle repeating, just not ours to fix anymore. Thanksgiving 2025. Emily hosted in her tiny apartment. Marcus brought sides. I brought wine. We sat on the floor around her coffee table. To family, Emily said. To lessons learned, Marcus added. To starting over, I finished. Plastic and glass clinked together. Perfect imperfection. The fortune I'd spent a lifetime building was nothing compared to the wealth in that small room. A daughter's respect, earned not given, and the peace that comes when love finally learns to let go. And maybe that's how real inheritance works. Not through money, but through becoming. Somewhere beyond that Thanksgiving night, other stories waited to begin. Because redemption, like love, rarely ends where we expect it to.